right now we have the very distinct pleasure of bringing on one of the distinguished NBA writers out there. Here he is. You know him from NBA.com, on Twitter at John Schuhmann. It is John Schuhmann.
What's up, fellas? How you?
We're good, man. Thanks a lot for coming on.
My
Now
pleasure.
remove your face from where my face was. All right, man. So you've been covering the FIBA America games. How's it been going? Explain why this is significant to people who haven't been following and maybe who have a job so they can't watch on ESPN3.
Well, I mean, it's significant because it's determining that the two teams that qualify for the Olympics from the Americas region for the Olympics next year, and then it also determines three teams that qualify for the qualifying tournament, which takes place next summer before the Olympics, and that's a 12-team tournament where the top three finishers qualify for the Olympics. So at the end of this summer, we're going to have 9 teams qualifying for the Olympics, and they're going to add 3 more early next summer, actually early July, I believe it is, out of that 12-team tournament. So from the Americas region, they get the first and second place finishers qualify for the Olympics, and then third, fourth, and fifth qualify for that extra tournament.
All right, so you've been getting to see some NBA players in action in organized game, not in pickup. Is there anyone you've seen who appears to be developing or be in a situation where they're showing some skills that you maybe didn't know they had?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that about any of the NBA players. The one thing that I love watching this tournament is watching Carlos Arroyo, because the FIBA Carlos Arroyo is completely different than the NBA Carlos Arroyo. They're two entirely different players, and it's fascinating because this one is, the FIBA Carlos Arroyo is much more aggressive, always looking for his shot, has the ball in his hands a lot more often, and he's really fun to watch. And it's a complete contrast to the NBA Carlos Arroyo that sort of dribbles the ball up the floor, passes it off, and then stands in the corner waiting for somebody to pass him the ball back.
Hey, John. You tend to specialize in statistics. You have a lot of information in that field, and I'm wondering, as we're talking about Arroyo and how differently he plays in a setting that isn't the NBA, what are the pratfalls in comparing European statistics to and trying to project based off of those statistics as to how good players are going to be in the NBA? What are the difficulties in doing that?
I mean, it's really tough. I mean, it was tougher. It'll be interesting to see now that FIBA has adopted the NBA lane, if that's going to change things and make things a little bit more similar. It was always tough with big men because they just didn't get the ball as much in European play. So if a guy, a big man who's being drafted, or a big man who had been drafted and was staying over in Europe, it was hard to project exactly. I remember Nenad Kristic was an example where you just couldn't tell how good he was going to be, what kind of a player he was going to be when he was playing for Partizan in Serbia, because he just, big men just didn't touch the ball as much. And it also depends on the system. There's some European teams that play, an NBA style system, and there's some European teams that just move the ball a lot differently and move the ball a lot more, and that can make it a lot of fun to watch, actually.
Al, that's an interesting question. I wonder, do you prefer that style? Because personally, it's almost an issue I have with the European style of play and the international style of play, that it's almost too equanimable. I can't. I've lost my pronunciation, but it's like everybody is on the same drive and kick kind of playbook, to the point where they almost don't differ as much to me as NBA players do, and they don't kind of flash their individual skill as much as NBA players do. Do you prefer that kind of collectivist Euro style, or do you prefer the NBA style with more isolation play?
I mean, I love them both. When I'm watching the EuroBasket, I don't really say that, there's I like watching. I enjoy watching this player or that player. I enjoy watching certain teams. Serbia is one where I really love watching because they move the ball so well. They've got a bunch of guys who can make shots. Um, and they have a good point guard, a smart, heady point guard, and they just move the ball until it finds the open man. I love that kind of play. Um, but of course, I mean the NBA is different, and you got to appreciate them both. I mean, I don't think they're. I prefer one over the other. But like I said, yeah, it is like a collective type of thing where I enjoy watching Brazil play, or I enjoy watching Lithuania play rather than I enjoy watching certain players on those teams.
I mean, there's a lot of great team play in the international game and also in EuroLeague, and I'm wondering. The NBA has been very reluctant to hire coaches from those ranks. I mean, I know D'Antoni had some success and he was brought over, but he's American. Do you see that changing in the future? And should it change? Is the NBA totally missing out on a great resource with all these international coaches?
I mean, I don't know if I see it changing because I don't really know what the mentality is or why it is that way. I mean, I think like a guy like David Blatt would be a great coach on any level. He has that Russian team, playing great defensively. They don't really have like a go-to guy. I mean, even in FIBA ball, like Kirilenko's not a guy who's going to create his own shot and be a 20 points per game scorer. But they're a team that moves the ball really well, has a high assist rate, and has a lot of balance. Has a bunch of guys who can score, and they're balanced and deep, and they're a great defensive team, best defensive team in that tournament so far. And I think Blatt is a guy that could coach anywhere on any level. He'd be a pretty good coach. And I don't know if the NBA is in his future, probably not. But there's certainly coaches out there. The Serbian coach, I always forget his name, but he's a great coach too. Um, and the Brazilian coach, Magnano, I believe his name is another great coach. And I think those guys could win on every level. It's just a matter of some team taking that risk.
I mean, I'd certainly like to see that risk. Bringing it back to stats, I'm wondering. This is a very general, broad question, and I apologize for that a little bit. But how far do you think we are from having this thing figured out? Because I'm just amazed at how the people who traffic in statistical analysis differ so wildly in their projections. Like Dave Barry versus John Hollinger. How close are we to having kind of a standard statistical model and having it figured out almost to the point where they have it figured out in baseball?
I mean, it's tough because it's such a different sport than baseball. I mean, I forget where I read it somewhere the other day that baseball is a individual sport disguised as a team sport. Baseball is a bunch of one-on-one interactions, and it's so easy. It's a lot easier to quantify what an individual contributes in baseball than it is in basketball. Um, and because everything you do in basketball except your free throw shooting is influenced by the other nine guys on the floor. So I don't know when we're going to get there. I mean, I think you just got to take everything in context at this point. And I enjoy just looking at different things. Like you look at, point, efficiency differential when the guy's on the floor versus when he's off the floor. You look at opponent shooting percentage and stuff like that. You can look at, his his position and how he defends it. And there's lots of different numbers, and you have to sort of take them all in context. And one necessarily isn't. There's nothing that's like the holy grail at this point. I don't know if we'll ever get there. I like being able to look at five different things and have each of them contribute to the argument as far as how effective a player is offensively or defensively.